my presentation will be concentrated to the taxonomy of marine eels with special reference to the Indian waters. I am going to talk on a special group of fishes where in India, I hope the work started long back from Hamilton's era, but still I can feel that there is a lot of work that needs to be done in the modern taxonomic era with the modern tools added to the taxonomy. And I hope in this group we'll have many new discoveries in recent times. And before going to the exact technical terms, I'll just add some basics, as many participants are very young. And when we are considering India, it's about 8,000. Yeah. When we are talking about India as a entire Indian coast, we have several maritime states. You can see all those things. And we have about 8,000 plus kilometer of maritime coastline, and the coastal belt is about 3.28 million square kilometer. We have 14 major rivers draining into the sea, which provides a good estuarine region. We have coral reefs. We have almost all type of marine ecosystem that are there throughout the world in India. So the species diversity in India also likewise very rich. And when we see the major rivers ending to Bay of Bengal is much more than Arabian Sea. So we'll go on the details when we'll talk about the taxonomy, why these things I'm showing you. Then when we are talking about habitats, these are primary freshwater, marine, estuarine, and anatomous, catatomous. This just I'm going to give you a glimpse, because these things will come into play when we will go into the real taxonomy of Anguilliformes. Then this is just a glimpse. I hope as this forum has taken up for 3-4 days, and these things might be known to you all. And these are the total number of valid species throughout the world, nearly 35,000 plus species, and freshwater nearly 8,000, 18,000 plus. So half of these species are in marine, and including brackish water species, we have nearly 18,000 of marine and brackish water species. So I'm not going much into this. Then this is about the whole faunal diversity of India. It's about 1 lakh plus, and we host about 6.5% of world's biodiversity. And this is GEDESI's data about regarding the whole marine biodiversity. It's for 2016 data, and we have nearly 20,000 plus species in India, which accounts about 7% of the world's marine fauna. Then fishes of India, I hope might have gone through this. This data changes when we work out more, and nearly 3,632 fish species are there, which is about 10% of world fish records. And somehow this species number gets changed by some synonyms and acronyms used or uncounted. Now I'm coming to the points where we need to concentrate. The fish species along all the Indian maritime states, if you see, the Tamil Nadu is among the highly diverse maritime states in terms of fish diversity. This number is around 11, nearly 1,200. Now also discoveries are going on. So the reason is Tamil Nadu probably possesses a coral reef region, as well as many varieties of ecosystems that are present throughout India, that is in Tamil Nadu. And the number of workers, I can say this number of these species is morely related to the number of taxonomies that are worked throughout a longer period. And Tamil Nadu probably is one of the luckiest states to having many taxonomists working there. And Gujarat coast is having the lowest number of fish in terms of diversity. You will see that Tamil Nadu, then Lakshadweep and Kerala, also Andaman Nicobar. These 3-4 states, we have good taxonomic workers. I mean to say that the people who started working on taxonomy, they have focused on these 3-4 states. So the number of fish species is more. I hope the other states also will have nearly 700-800 species, where they less number. Probably this may be the average number throughout the Indian states. And these numbers, less numbers, has been due to less number of people worked in those areas, and the exploration is very less in those areas. Then I'm coming to this is just a picture how the number of species has been discovered since 2002. This is all about freshwater and marine fishes. It is taken from catalog of fishes. Even if 2021 we have 30 plus species, 40 nearly 40 plus species has been described by now. Average, if you see, nearly 300, 400 species has been described annually. Then these are the 50 best authors who has described maximum number of species. This is also taken from catalog of fishes. You can see there is none of them are Indians. Some people have worked in India, though they are from foreign, and some of their work is concentrated in India. So this particularly, I'm showing this slide because the modern age taxonomists should understand that we are lagging behind of taxonomists. We don't have sufficient number of taxonomists to work on these fields. And now I'm going to number of new species discovery trend in India. This is about entire animal discovery. And this is about new fish discovery in India. If you see, the freshwater fish number is very high because there are good number of good workers, particularly in Kerala and Northeast. For them, the number is coming up regularly. If you see, the marine fish discovery in India is at a very marginal rate, and I don't think that there is no species in marine. Rather than I can say this is related to number of serious taxonomic workers that we need to work on these groups, particularly in marine. And I'm showing you some of the scientists describe new freshwater species. If you see, these are all Indian scientists. I have taken it from also derived from catalog of fishes. If you see Professor Vishwanathan, he has highest number of species among the Indian people, and 97 species he has described. And also, if you see, these are all giants of freshwater taxonomy. And some more people might be there. I might have missed the names. And if you see the marine fish species, you see the all youngsters except Talwar, SS Mishra, and Ramarao. All are almost 40, at the age of 40 or below that. Even some research scholars name counts within this marine fish discovery. If you see, all the discovery started in a very early stage of last century, last decades or this decade. And the reason is we could not able to produce much good taxonomists in recent past, or not much people have taken interest to work on these fields of marine particularly. Then I am going now to the field of Anguilliformes. When we are talking about world status, we have 16 families in Anguilliformes. Total number of species is 1001. And Opisthidae is the richest family in the, particularly in the Anguilliformes group throughout the world. But we'll go gradually how to identify these species. It's practically impossible to train all of you within 1 hour. I hope the taxonomist can understand. But I will try to give you some basics where you can able to at least, if I'm asking you some questions when you are sending a photograph, you could able to answer so that the identification will be easier in later stages. But this needs your concentration, your patience, and you need to be vigilant while working on particularly these groups, as it's really a tough and confusing group, particularly when the fish taxonomy is concerned. This is the world scenario, how the number of species is maximum in Opisthidae, then Muranidae and Congridae. The same scenario you'll find maybe in India, but in slightly reverse here. But these three are the dominant families in Indian context also. Now I'll go gradually the details taxonomic tools. Then when we are talking about eels, it has a complex life structure. It not like normal fishes. It goes through a larval stage, and sometimes we used to collect larvae for identification, though counting the myomeres and the head structures has been proven to be a standardized technique for identifying the larva, but it more often misleads. So I will suggest while identifying eels, better to go for adult eels for a better identification, or if you are going for larva, go for DNA barcoding so that your identification can be confirmed with a concrete base. And this is the life cycle of eels. When leptocephaly, then glass eel, then yellow eel, sometimes directly to glass eel to adults, like that. Then first thing, when we are working on taxonomy, we need to collect, preserve, photograph all those things. I will just tell you because normal fish collection is different and anguilliformis collection is entirely different. Mostly for morays and some groups you will have to go for hook line gears, and some groups I had shown you some of the pictures. I had shown one, unfortunately I had shown a picture of Dr. Sumod, who is no more. He has passed out this month, and I feel I wish his soul should rest in peace. And he's one of the very dynamic worker, and he had come to us a few years back. Probably he's from Kerala state, and I'm showing some of the pictures when we are going to collect eels from shallow water. This is the best gear to collect eels because this ladder line gear, and from deep sea benthic eels, it's almost the uh, bottom trawling helps to a greater extent. Then some local gears, hook line gears are very good and very effective for the, particularly for the morays and coral reef regions. And many, almost all type of gears used to catch eels. But for them, these are mostly bycatches, except some of the commercial catches like Strophodon or some Congrede eels or Marine associated eels. Rest of eels they used to throw as trash. So you have to, for me, the better collection way is to develop a good relationship with fishermen, as many as fishermen you can, then ask them to bring all trashes or all the eels that they are collecting, at least 4 5 to the coast, and collect them, because practically it's not possible to develop one gear system to collect many varieties of eel due to their completely diverse habitat, and the collection procedure is really tough because most of them are benthic. Those pelagic eels are smaller in size, so they won't come in commercial catches. So you have to develop a network with fishermen to collect. That is the best way. And nowadays, almost all fishermen are having the GPS system and the depth measuring system, and they can tell you exact things where they have caught the fish and everything. Then comes the question of photography. Yes, photography is one of the very difficult thing when it comes to eel, because sometimes you need to show the fins. You may not able to show the fins in a single angle. You may have to take another angle. Then there might be some upper series characters. So you have to design the photography in such way so that maximum characters can be shown in minimum pictures. So if you are going to give 3 4 pictures or 5 pictures or 10 pictures in a paper, you need to photograph that in a very precise manner and try to take photograph in face condition always. I will suggest, if you are going to work on these particular groups, please try to take a photograph in fresh condition, because we have seen that after coming back to the station or after 3 4 days of preservation, the fish used to discolor. If it is brown, complete brown eel, then it is really tough to get the exact coloration of the fish. So I'll suggest all of you, please go for a fresh photography first, then preserve the specimen. Then preservation, either you preserve in 70% alcohol or 10% formalin, whatever you like. But if you want to do DNA, please take some fresh tissues and preserve that in alcohol for sure. Nowadays, if you are going to have the new species description, I will suggest go for both classical and modern taxonomic tools instead of only DNA or only morphological tools. Then you have to register the specimen. This is normal JDSI cataloging system. So you may name the collector and all those things as an unidentified collection. Then you, after that, you can identify that and name that and register that. Now I will go to tell you some of the tools what we use for the identification of eels. I'll suggest that classical taxonomy, I hope most of the taxonomists will agree that it is must for identification of any marine fishes, not only eel, but any of the marine fishes you want to identify. It's better to work out on classical taxonomy, the available taxonomic keys, then morphometric characters and all those things. These are some of the basic characters of eels which you need to measure. This is the complete total length. This is preanal length. This is head length. Then this is lateral line pores. You may not find lateral line pores in all eels. Then you just see how we have taken the picture by spreading the fin. It may not be possible in all groups to spread the fin like this, but I had taken this photograph because it would be more ideal to show you the real thing. And you can see the eye diameter, how to measure snout length, tail length. These all measurements you need to take very precisely. If smaller eels, please, after total length, particularly the measurements after head length, please use calipers, not by the normal scales, because the measurement needs to be very precise while identifying these particular groups of species or specimens. Then we used to count the head pores. And this is a typical structure of head pores, how I have drawn. This is one of the species described by us, Opisthothus John Marcus Curry. And this is a supra orbital pores. It may vary from species to species. Then infraorbital pores, this portion, supratemporal pores, and lower jaw pores, preopercular mandibular pores. Then these are the lateral line pores. These terminologies also varies from family to family. So these are the ideal pore structure what I have shown you. So you must try to count all these pores while identifying a species, any species of eel, and a stereozoom microscope is enough for counting all these pores. Sometimes what happens, some case studies what we observe, it's very difficult to observe the pores due to their pore color and body color exactly matches, and you may not able to see the pores at all. There you may have to apply some artificial colors, like ink, red inks, or some non-carcinogenic colors to the pores which will be stained differently for a smaller time. We used to do it. We have done it for only one or two species by now. Mostly, you will find these pores clear and crystal clear, I can say, in a stereozoom microscope if there is everything is okay with your specimen and preservation is okay. Then you need to go for the teeth structure. This is one of the most valuable character for eels because their feeding habit varies, their living pattern varies, their prey catching style varies, and their dependency, their ecosystem all varies. So they have almost all species has a different dental pattern. So this is a Murray's dental pattern. This is intermaxillary, this is vomerine teeth, maxillary teeth, mandibular teeth. These are the terminologies that we use. But when we come to other groups, you see this is intermaxillary, this is maxillary, this is vomerine, and mandibular teeth. You can see this. These are all single row of teeth. These are by two rows, and single rows. These are multiserial, or sometimes these are like club shaped, and their shape also varies from species to species. Particularly in Congridae, the shape varies to a greater extent in a bunched manner, but in Murray's, it's easy to identify the dental pattern because they have big teeth for better catching of prey. So I'll show you some of the teeth of eels depending on their structure. You can see here, you can see that teeth are granular. Here you can see sharp teeth. Here you can see many multi-rows teeth. Here also you can see sharp teeth. And these are all from Opisthidae family. And Murray, you just see this intermaxillary teeth is 5 row. Here it is 3 rows. And it's another Murray which from other genus you can see the teeth is bent. You can see this portion particularly bent backward. And this belongs to another group of species. And you can see also this is a teeth of Echidna nebulosa. You just see the teeth pattern entirely different from this, and it's almost smalleriform or big granules like teeth. And this is a teeth of Bathycongrus eel. You can see some teeth that come out. You can see those teeth outside the mouth particularly. And this is a Congridae teeth, and this is Murraynosocetes teeth. Meronocercidae, a family of commercial eels, and this is a Talaban, congruous of Talaban teeth. You can see the complete different teeth pattern with families, and even if interfamilies, even if species to species, it's all you need to study. It's these patterns, how they have been arranged, and how you can do best, and to identify these species. You will find that every eel has a unique teeth pattern, almost unique teeth pattern. So while studying any eel species, you need to be very concentrated on this particular character. Then we used to do some osteological character, particularly counting the vertebrates, because their total lifespan depend on swimming and hiding, or going down to the hiding down in the sand, bottom sand. So their vertebra pattern is unique, and we normally used to take, this is pre-dorsal vertebrae, this is pre-anal vertebrae, and total vertebrae that we used to take by a normal X-ray also can solve your problem if it is a larger specimen. But smaller specimen, you need to be in special care, careful while doing X-rays and all those things. Sometimes it is troublesome, particularly if it is a formalin preserved specimen for a longer period, and particular some bones used to deteriorate. So it's very difficult to count that vertebrae of those eels of maybe 50 years or 60 years preserved specimens. And these are the basic characters which varies, particularly in interspecific variation. You will find, you may find variation in total vertebrae, you may find variation in pre-anal vertebrae or pre-dorsal vertebrae. So these are very unique characters of eels. Then I'm coming to the modern taxonomic tools like DNA barcoding, or COI gene sequencing, or whole genome sequencing. Sometimes I feel this is, for me, is just a good tool. Please, I'm emphasizing it once again. It's not the entire taxonomy, rather it's a good taxonomic tool. Please go to the morphotaxonomy first, then do it. Or else if you are going for back calculation, it will be disastrous for you and the world of taxonomy. I can give you some example in my lecture later on. And for me, it is one of the best available tools, but do not rely completely on this. It may give you erroneous landing, I can say. This is just a species we have described. I'll talk about this in later stages. And I'm just giving you one example of how DNA barcoding sometimes land into a problem. We have just recently identified a Congriosox talaban, one species from West Bengal region, and we have just done barcoding of that. It has nearly 10% genetic variation from this Talabanidis group. I hope you understand, this is another species and this is another species. But somebody from Bangladesh has uploaded Talabanidis in the name of Talaban. So this misidentification, it 100% matches with Talabanidis, and our species goes to a completely different place, having 10% variation with Talaban. If as a non-taxonomist you will work and without identifying the species, you start working on this, you will say that yes, mine one is a new species, I will describe it. But it will be disastrous while describing a new species on the basis of the available database in the gene bank or anywhere else. So these sort of things which unverified data non-taxonomists used to upload, that creates a problem for the taxonomists. So please, as it's a forum of taxonomists, I would love to talk that. Please go with the classical taxonomists first, and simultaneously you do the DNA barcoding of every species you like to do. Then conclude anything, but do not conclude anything just by comparing your generated DNA data with the available DNA data set. Then I will go to the 16 families with a very short time, though I'm not sure whether the time will permit me to complete all these things. So first of all, Anguillidae is one of the families of eel which spends most of their time in freshwater and enter into the sea. for breeding. Once again, they migrate to fresh water like that. And you will find that it has a well-developed lip projecting jaw. Lower jaw is slightly greater, and it is having scales. Particularly behind the pectoral fin, it is having some scales, not the entire body scale. Dorsal fin origin is well behind pectoral fin. This is the characteristic of family, particularly the scale and this position you can see. And it is having a well-developed lateral line, but lateral line you cannot see in naked eye. You have to go to microscope for better visibility of lateral line. And this is having one genus in the family with 17 species worldwide. India hosts nearly 3 species in our water. We may have another 1 or 2 species reported, but I doubt. So I have mentioned it as 3 species. Then another family is Clopsidae. It's known as false murre. I'll go to murre family later on. Now I'm going to the false murre. If you see, just remember that gill opening is very small and murre gill opening is comparatively larger. You just see the Clopsidae teeth. If you see the maxilla and vomer in 2 rows, well separated from each other, then maxilla is 2 rows, 2 rows. Normally, it's a clopsidial structure. And incomplete lateral line is having only 1 or 2 pores here. It's having very minimum number of pores. I can say maximum 2 pores here. These are the basic characteristics of this family when you are going, because I'm not talking much on this particular group as there is no report from India, and it's having 8 genus worldwide and 25 species. You just remember the gill openings is very small and lateral line incomplete to 2, and dental structure is like this. This will separate the family from other families. Then I'm going to Colocongridae. Colocongridae also India is having only 1 species, but I doubt we may have much more species than this one. Rather than we may have three species at least, but the normally their depth of occurrence is very high. I can say they occur normally from 300-meter depth onwards. So our deep sea research is very narrow. I can say 1 or 2 institutions are going for that. So big gap area is collection of these species, for which we may not able to describe more species from this group. So it is having a short body. Normally, if you find such a eel, you may not confuse with a normal fish rather than a eel. And it is having a very small snout. Its snout is very small, and the body and anus well behind the mid body. Its anus is far behind the mid body, and it's almost a structure of a Perciformis. You can see that if you see, but it has a small ribbon shaped tail like things. You can visualize this picture is exactly Raniceps picture, one of the species from India. So you will get hardly these species from normal collections unless you are targeting, and it is having some unique character like some pores. Maximum number of pores you will find in this picture, and the lateral line pores is concentrated to up to pectoral fin length only, from head to pectoral fin length. So this is very easy to identify, but getting these specimens is very rare. Then there is Thidae. This family is also not occurring in India. It is called as neck eel. It is having a neck-like structure in the head region. Dorsal anal fin reduced almost to the tail region, and it has a dormal reach. Here it has a dormal reach, which is completely restricted to this family. Constricted neck, you can see this constricted neck. This is particularly restricted to this group of fishes, but we do not have any species reported from India from this. It is having 2 genus and 3 species worldwide. Then Myrocongridae, we do not have any species reported from India. These are thin murres, and it is, I have shown you there that there are only 2 lateral line. It is having 6 to 7 lateral line pores, and there we do not have pectoral fin. It is having pectoral fin, and you can easily differentiate this eel from murres because it is very thin and this lateral line is comparatively more than Murray and other group what I had shown you false Murray. These are also called thin Murrays, Mitochondridae. These are also not recorded from India. Then I am going to Muranidae family. This is one of the most diverse family in India. I can say the highest number of species reported from this group in India, species worldwide, and in India, 53 species has been discovered till now. I had shown you there that here also two branchial lateral line near to gill opening. You will have two lateral line pores. Gill opening is comparatively larger and no pectoral fin here. You will not find any pectoral fin. Posterior nostril is well up, and you will find this particularly fin region. I will show you exactly the pictures how this particularly Europe. It has two subfamilies, Muranini and Europterygini. In Europterygini, you will have the dorsal fin origin far behind the body. It is almost near to the tail region, restricted dorsal and anal fin. It is very close to the tail region. You can see this picture. And in Muranini, it is started close to branchial region, dorsal fin, and anal fin close to anal. So pectoral and pelvic fins absent. No lateral pores except one or two above or behind gill. These are not called as lateral end pores, rather these are called as branchial lateral end pores because it is very close to gill opening. And this is this group identification. I will give you some glimpse. This is just a picture I had taken. This is dorsal fin origin and anal fin origin. You see Muranini, and in Indo-Origin you will find the dorsal origin very close to tail region and anal fin origin also very close to the tail region. And if you see these Murrays are beautifully colored eels, and if you see, I'm just showing you some case studies. These are three eels. Almost you will see that the pattern is almost same, and these eels also having somehow similar pattern with this. But if you'll observe these eels carefully, you will find lots of differences. These eels are differentiated on vertebrae pattern. These eels are differentiated from coloration pattern. These eels are differentiated from teeth pattern. And you will see these are all brown on pattern eels. Means there is no pattern, nothing is there in these eels. Earlier in India, we have only Strophodon sathate, the brown eel. Now we have described nearly 4-5 species of brown eel. This is Misrai, this is Andamanensis, Gymnothorax, Andamanensis, Gymnothorax Misrai, then Gymnothorax odissi, and Gymnothorax vishakensis. These 4 species has been added by our group, and these are all new record to India. Also, this is Gymnothorax indicus. These 5 species has been added by our group as a new species, and these 2 are also added as a new to India. I hope, particularly I'm focusing on this group because in India there might be 10 more species in this group, but identifying this particular group is the most difficult task unless you have a complete data set of these eels, particularly collection, then photographs, because sometimes what happens, some color eels also turn down to be this sort of eels when you preserve it randomly without specific cares. So identifying these eels is not only difficult but also will yield you many new species in recent future from Indian water. And these eels are mainly found in the region where estuaries mix, normally to the close to the estuarine region or muddy regions. But these particular groups you will find more in the particularly more in the coral reef region or rocky habitats and all those things. Now I'm going to show you some of the pictures, the character, what you need to study. First of all, I had shown you color, then this is position of eye. If you see this eye positions, it's almost middle of the this upper jaw, middle, almost in the middle of the upper jaw. But if you see this, it is almost in the front, close to the snout, very close to the snout in upper jaw. This differentiate this genus, Gymnothorax and Strophodon in this group. So there are many characters you need to take care particularly, and this is one of the characters to easily distinguish the two genus. Now I had shown you some of the pictures earlier. these three pictures I had talked about, and now I'm going to their teeth. If you see their teeth, this is completely serrated teeth, and this is a smooth teeth. If you see, if you open these teeth, you can easily distinguish the serrated teeth and smooth teeth under microscope. Then only you have to separate the characters and separate the genus like that. Or in the same genus also, there are two groups with serrated teeth and smooth teeth. So you have to group them like that. So these are the very minute characters you need to study from the microscope, or sometimes with hand also you can easily verify the serrated teeth if the specimen is large. OP-study, it's really a challenging task to work on OP-study because you will not find much literature on these particular groups, and you will find that most of the eels are brown, same color almost. So it's probably the toughest work to work on family OP-study rather than any other group. And these groups for identifying into group level or family level is very easy. Sometimes 10 is finless, some another subfamilies with tail tip, caudal fin with fin, and it is well developed, having a well developed pectoral fin, lateral line complete, dorsal fin origin almost very close to the pectoral fin in some in one group, and very behind in another group. Anterior nostril, and its major character is posterior nostril opens into the mouth or almost in the labial condition, and its tail tip is very hard because its habitat is like that. It used to burrow in sand, it used to hide inside the sand, and it moves backward. Normally if you attack this eel, it will move backward to dig down itself into the sand. So, and this is the frontal canal pores, median supraorbital pore of frontal canal. This is also present in this group. So, and you will find no pectoral fin also in another group, or very rudimentary pectoral fin in another group. These two subfamilies I will be discussing now. These are also known as snake eels. You will find two subfamilies. You will see the tail structure. Here, tail with fin, covered with fin, and these are naked tails. This is Opistini subfamily, and this is Myristini subfamily. So this there is not very difficult to identify this group, particularly when grouping. But while identifying this group, it will be really tough to go with the coloration pattern and all those things. And sometimes in this group, you will find Siri in the mouth, particularly here you will find Siri in the upper jaw. Here you will find Siri in the both jaw. Though the overall body structure you will find same. So there are many characters you need to take care into. Sometimes you will find a two tubes between anterior and posterior nostril like this. So these are some of the characters you need to take care while you are identifying this particular group of eels. And you see some color pattern. There are unique coloration pattern. It's also one of the recently described eel by some group, some of the scientists from RVNC. And if you see these two groups, you will find that these are almost very similar, but it's having no Siri and it's having Siri. If you see morphologically in field, you will find that this is a single eel and single species. Earlier, it was regarded as a single species. Later on, we have reported this for the first time from India, though it is there from a long period. Probably people had mistaken or misidentified this with that particularly species, though I had not named all these species name here. This is Brachyosomopis syrochelis, and this is Ophisthus lithinus. These are, even if genus are different due to presence of Siri. So you see this looks a complete brown eel, but you see the white spot marking. Some eels are very unique, like Ophisthus cephalogena, this particular eel, but some are very typical, very confusing. If you see all these eels in the field, you will find that these are all single species. So don't go by color pattern to identify any of the eel species. Please go to the characters and study it. The all and these two species we have described These two species we have added new to India. Probably these were there since a long time or since beginning, and nobody has traced and misidentified it with other species as a common species, like that sort of things. And I'll talk about the discoveries later on. And this is one of the third diverse family in India, Congridae, and you can easily identify this particular group. It's lower lip, lips well developed, anterior nostril well placed in the front, and posterior nostril also you will find like opistid, Murenidae in the upper part sometimes, and dorsal fin origin very close to normally pectoral fin, and caudal fin well developed, and anal fin and dorsal fin you can see the position. It's really very easy to identify this group of eels, and its teeth are mainly granular or molariform teeth with bunching pattern. What I had shown you, and it is having three subfamilies: Heterocongur, Heterocongrini, then Bathymerini and Congrini. If you go to Heterocongrini, it is almost a very elongated pattern of eels with a well-developed this oblique angle of mouth. Its mouth is opening downwards. You can see it easily, and this slightly oblique or lateral. These two families, and almost the pectoral fin is reduced here. Here, well-developed pectoral fins. Caudal fin also reduced in this group. Here, well-developed caudal fin. In these two groups, almost maximum characters matches, except dorsal fin unsegmented in this group. Single dorsal fin structure, and dorsal fin segmented in this group, particularly Congrini. And you will find 27 species in Indian waters, and worldwide you will find 220 species in world waters and 32 genus. Then family Heteronechelis, it is not found in India. It is having no pectoral fin, no portion head and body, eye reduced, very reduced, and covered with a small transparent cover. And there is no species occurring in India. Total worldwide having 8 species in this particular group. Then Cerebomeridae, and this particular family is easy to identify because its nostril merges to a single nostril like structure. You will find a structure like this, nostril structure like this, and it's almost fused. You see, just fused, and two pores, three pores in between these two nostrils, but it's a fused structure, I can say. And you see the Pomeranian teeth is saw like in maximum cases, and it is nowhere. For this, its name has been named as Cerebomeridae. Elongated jaw means lower jaw is elongated, and anterior and posterior nostril close together. Three pores between the nostril and other pores in head and body absent. Only three pores between these two nostrils and no pore in the head and body. Then I'm going to the family Moringidae. This is one of the camellar family in estuarine regions in India. You see, this is a picture from a Chilka Lake, and you see the fin structure. You will find the caudal fin prominent in immature and mature specimens, and the dorsal fin begins far behind head. You just see where the dorsal fin begins, almost behind the mid length, and hair pores only on lower jaw. It is not having any head pore on upper jaw. It's very easy to identify due to its typical structure, and in India only 7 species has been discovered so far, and most of these species has been described in this group from Indian subcontinent, 3-4 species nearly. Then Cyanophobrachidinae, these are very unique eels, I can say. So its gill opening is very low. It's very easy to identify this group. You see the gill opening almost behind the this fin, pectoral fin. So it's very easy, and India also 5 species has been reported, and sometimes you will confuse these groups as almost these two gill openings fused together in the lower part or ventral side. So normally you will confuse with Murray. Sometimes if you will not check this only character, other characters almost matches with Murray, and its coloration also sometimes matches with Murray. So don't get confused. Just check the gill opening. It's not lateral. If it is almost in the lower side and almost joining together, then it is Cyanopobranchidae, and it's very easy to identify. Then I am coming to a family of Morenosocidae. These are highly commercial species, and you will find gill opening almost mixed at ventral side. This is like the earlier one. The gill opening almost fuses together in the ventral side. Complete lateral line you will find. Then vomer 3 rows in general, and mid row is prominent. You see the vomer is just the opening, and you see the vomer and teeth structure. And this teeth structure defines the genus, and this teeth structure defines the family structure character. Then these are some of the pictures of this particular family. Then Nemistidae, you will find this is a unique big shape, big like jaw in female and juvenile, and males almost the jaw got reduced. Body very elongated. You can see the elongation pattern, and anus very anterior. Its unique character is anus is here. Just see, almost close to pectoral, and no family in eels are having anus so anteriorly placed. So in India, 3 species are been described by now. There might be some more species in Indian waters, but as these are normally deep sea fishes, our collection target collection is not there, so we may be lacking with this. And it's very difficult to identify these particular species from males. So we may have male specimens collected, but we may not able to conclude to the species level. And for this sort of groups, we need to take the help of DNA barcoding first to standardize these 9 species in the DNA barcode database. Then only we can have some more species added to these particular groups. And this is a picture of Nemistidae, but we could not identify due to its tail region is almost cut. It's a field photograph we have taken, but we could not complete its identification. Then Natastomatidae, this is also having upper jaw elongated. You can see the upper jaw elongated. There you can see both the jaws are almost huge, very small thread-like jaws. But here you will find the farm jaws, and the upper jaw is much larger than lower jaw. So in India, 3 species has been reported, and 46 species worldwide with 6 genus. Pectoral fin is absent. In most of the species, you will not find the pectoral fin. Then scales absent and complete lateral line. You will find a lateral line course throughout the body, but there is no scale. This is a Sauranchilis petersi, one of the species from that particular group. And Protangulidae, I will better not talk much about. This is only reported from Palau, and it is monospecific genus. I hope there is not much talk on this particular group. Whether I'm confused whether it is taken into Anguilliformis as a character properly with its morphological characteristics, or the authors have taken it into Anguilliformis with just by DNA barcoding by Johnson et al. So it's really tough to tell anything about this particular group of eels, because I had never dealt with these particular groups, and it's only reported from a single place from a fringed reefing cave, fringing reef cave. So not much talk on these groups in particular. Then some problems. I'm talking about some problems when vertebrae is different, teeth is same, preanal length ratio is different, looks very same. We have come across some eels from Chilka Lake. I will give you just a case study. So why I'm telling both classical and modern taxonomic tools are imperative for some problems. Only DNA barcoding can solve this problem. Earlier I told you that don't go alone with DNA barcoding. Now I'm telling for these sorts of problem, only DNA barcoding can help you, because you see lots of differences are there. We have found two group of eels, not two eels, rather 5, 6 from each group. One having vertebrae of 170, 180 range, and another group having 150 range. We thought easily it's 2 species. Then we have counted vertebrae completely different, but when I had checked the teeth and morphologically, both are almost same. Then preanal length ratio completely different as the vertebrae is different, looks very same. Then I thought better not to describe it as a new species and go for DNA barcoding. Then when we have done DNA, you can you can see this easily that both these group belongs to the same species. So sometimes you need to have work on your ethics to judge whether complete DNA barcoding is needed or not. So for this sort of problem, you will find many in eels, and you need. That's why I'm telling you that go for both techniques. Then both molecular and classical taxonomy is needed for a better taxonomic approach. Then I am going to show you some pictures of our new discoveries in recent times. I hope we are running out of time. I'll try to wrap up quickly. These are on brown on pattern eels and described by us. And these two were earlier regarded as single species when we collected some specimens of particular this slightly looking like this color pattern. We found that the fin is different, their depth range of occurrence is different. Then we had verified their teeth are different. Then we have communicated it, and it has been published. Now we have done DNA also, and it's completely different, nearly 14% difference between these two groups. And these are deep waters species, mainly 100-meter depth, 50 to 100-meter depth. And these are shallow water zones. These are Gymnothorax stele, and we have renamed it as Gymnothorax. We have described it as Gymnothorax subotile in 2017. And you see the brown on-pattern eels. This is also one of the brown on-pattern eels among those three. It is having 2 rows of intermaxillary teeth, and its DNA is also different. And this is a unique eel specimen we have got from Visakhapatnam. Once we are very much frustrated that we had not got any collection. In the last day, we got bunch of collection from which we described earlier species and this species, Bisachensis and Propencoa, from a single collection, single place. So you see the unique teeth pattern, and we after very long discussion with Dr. David Smith, we have concluded it as Angelic or Propencoa. Then this is a brown on-pattern eel described from Odisha. And this is Opisthus John Marcuscuri, described by us from this region. Gymnothorax andamanensis is another eel, which Dr. Praveen Raj has sent me from Andaman. And immediately after seeing the photograph, I asked him for the specimen. Generously, he sent the specimen, and we have described it as a new species. And it's one of the prized possession because getting a brown on-pattern eel in Andaman is very rare, and it's one of the, I can say, price discovery from Dr. Praveen Raj and our group. And this particular eel, when we got this particular eel on Dr. Sumod, who is no more, I had shown him his picture. Unfortunately, he has passed out last week. He has come up with this eel to me long back while he was a student and working on his PhD. And we have worked it out on the basis of its teeth pattern and other morphological characters and separated it. This is a, and total vertebrae was like this, and it is a deep water species. He has collected it from a longer depth, and I am talking about the serrated pattern problems. We have sent these papers to Dutaxa, and Dutaxa, one of the reviewer has commented that this lower vertebrae may have resulted due to the fight between interspecific. As you have a single specimen, you could not publish this. And he was perfectly fine with his judgments. Fortunately, by the meantime, Dr. Binis from Andaman has collected another species from Kerala. He is also from Kerala and sent back to us. And when we verified both the 2-3 specimens from Binis collection, we found both the specimens are same. And we had gone for the revision of this species, and it is now established as Gymnothorax smithi, one of the prominent worker in particularly Murray, Dr. Smith. We have named it on his name. Then if you see both these species are very similar. If you see the Aurocephalus we have described from the collection of Nasad and Binis FSI collections, they have sent it to me. It's also from the depth of 90 to 100 meter, and it's also having the serrated teeth pattern. But you see the vertebrae was 130 and here it's nearly 150. And we have sufficient number of collections of both the yields now. Then this is Opisthes Kailash Chandrai, named after Dr. Kailash Chandra's name, collected from West Bengal Coast. And it's a recent discovery from Dr. Munal Das with us. And it's from Chennai, we described it with a single specimens. I had asked Dr. Munal to collect, if possible, try to collect some more specimens. And if you see the structure of this hill, it seems looks like a deep water species. He has got it from Tras of Chennai. And fortunately, he had tried several times but could not get another specimen. But it's so unique, it compelled us to describe it with a single specimen, and it's accepted with minimum comments from Jutaxa also. So in eels, if you are getting some deep water species specimens, please don't hesitate. If you have some good characters and if you got the specimen in phrase, go for DNA barcoding as well as other characters, and please describe it. It may get synonymized after a long time, or it may be a valid species, but unless you do it, you may not able to get a second specimen. What we observed from 2-3 species we have described recently from single specimen, and these are all valid specimens. But I won't suggest to describe eels or any species from single specimen unless you have very unique characters. Then this is Siremorena indica. This species, earlier we have thought that it is Chinensis. Why I am telling that DNA barcoding sometimes confusing. You see the Chinensis specimens. It's having nearly 15% difference than our specimen, but somebody has got this species from Indonesia, and due to morphological, only by seeing this series, he has identified it as Chinensis and deposited in DNA database as Chinensis. So later on, we have verified the specimens and described it as a new species in 2021. It is published. So revalidation of species is also another very important work. I am not sure how many of you have gone through this. It's a species. I'm just going to show you a case study. This is Opisthes silkensis. Its vertebrae is around 206 to 214 and described by Chowdhury in 1916. But it was synonymized with Pysodonopis concrivorus, which vertebrae is 150 to 160. Nobody has verified this species ever, but they have regarded it as it is collected from silica. Isodonopis concrivorus was a common species. It has been synonymized. We got a bunch of specimens from Diga of this while working out. I asked SS Mishra sir, do you have this specimen with you, original described specimen? He brought the specimen to me when I was in Diga, and we worked out. Entire vertebrae is different, teeth is different. It's entirely in a different genus. So while synonymizing, at least you should verify the species. While synonymizing a species, later on we have revalidated this species in 2019. So challenges in marine eels, best challenge is a collection due to vast area, less survey, deep sea collection are very rare. Accurate assessment of species or ecosystem is almost nil. In marine, it's really tough to define endemism, and best problem is we lack taxonomists. I hope in recent years we have developed 2-3 eel taxonomists who can take forward this work. And this is just a graphical presentation. Then way forward, I'll say capacity building, then conservation of ecosystem as an approach to conserve many known and unknown species. Value addition to marine products, particularly many of the colorful eels can serve as ornamental fishes, and those initiatives can be taken up by some youngster to provide the fishermen to catch some live eels instead of destroying it as a trash or bycatch. So I acknowledge all the marine fishermen of India because we have described many species from Indian waters. Dr. Kailash Chandra, Director Zoological Survey of India, my co-workers, Dr. David Smith, John McCusker, SS Mishra, Ronald Frick, Divino, then Hanso, Wang, Dr. Binish, Dr. Pravinda, Dipanjan, and late Sumod, Swarup, and Dr. Tudu, and Dr. M. Das, all from JDSI. So with this, these are some of the suggestive readings. Mainly these authors readings, because the number of papers are too much. It is very difficult to note it down. With this, I thank you all.